HOA Karen invites 50 guests to my pool, and I locked it to see how far she'd go. She knocked, then banged, and I watched from my window, her eyes filled with anger. But she didn't know. I wasn't just locking my pool. I was locking her out of everything she thought she controlled. The tension was thick. What would she do next? Would she break the rules or fall apart? And that's when it happened. Something that no one saw coming. Welcome to HOA Secrets Uncovered. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Mark, and I live in a quiet little suburban neighborhood. Well, at least, it used to be quiet. Now, things have gotten interesting. I'm just your regular guy trying to survive HOA chaos. But trust me, what you're about to hear isn't your average HOA story. Grab your popcorn, and let's dive into today's tale. It all started when I moved into this picture-perfect neighborhood. When I first drove into the cul-de-sac, I felt like I was in one of those old sitcoms. You know the kind, where the houses are too neat and everything is just too perfect. There were white picket fences, trimmed lawns, and neighbors walking their dogs with smiles on their faces. Everything was calm. Too calm. I should have known something was off, but I didn't. I was just happy to have found a place to settle down. The house I chose was nice. Not too big, not too small. But what caught my eye the most was the HOA sign at the front of the neighborhood. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought to myself, it's just a small group, keeping things in order. I can deal with it. The first time I met Karen, the HOA president, was when I was moving in. She showed up uninvited, of course. I was unloading boxes when she walked up to me with that fake, over-the-top smile plastered on her face. "Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Karen, the HOA president," she said, extending her hand. I shook it, but there was something about her. Something cold. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked around, took a quick glance at my lawn, and then turned back to me. "I just want to make sure you know about the neighborhood rules." I nodded, already feeling a little uneasy. She handed me a stack of papers. The rules. I skimmed through them. Lawn height restrictions, mailbox designs, fence colors, even the kind of shrubs you were allowed to plant. It felt like a never-ending list of things to be perfect. And then came the part that I couldn't ignore. "One more thing," she said, her voice dropping low as if she was about to share a secret. "If you ever decide to use the pool, you need to ask the HOA for permission first." Permission? I paused, trying to process what she was saying. In my head, I thought, are you kidding me? I just moved here, and now I need permission to use a pool I'm paying for? But I didn't say anything. I just smiled back. "Thanks for the info, Karen." She turned to leave, but before walking away, she threw one last look at me. "Remember, we're watching." I stood there, holding the stack of papers, feeling more like a prisoner than a homeowner. But I didn't think much of it at first. I figured, it's just the HOA. They're harmless, right? Days passed, and I began to settle in. I didn't think too much about the rules, even though the HOA kept sending reminders about things like lawn maintenance and seasonal decor. But then, something strange started happening. Karen would show up unexpectedly, each time with that same smile. She didn't just knock on my door. She insisted on having a chat about how things were going in the neighborhood. She asked if I had any questions about the rules or how I was adjusting to the community standards. At first I thought she was just being friendly, maybe a little overbearing, but still. Then it started to feel like something more. Every time she came over, she'd comment on the tiniest things, like how my mailbox was a shade too dark, or how my lawn wasn't green enough yet. I started to feel like I was being constantly watched. One morning, I woke up to find a letter on my door. Warning, lawn color violation. I laughed at first. I mean, my lawn looked fine, right? But the letter was serious. And that was when I realized Karen wasn't just an over-enthusiastic neighbor. She was a control freak. And the HOA wasn't there to help. It was there to keep us in line. It was all about control. But here's the thing. What if I didn't follow the rules? What if I pushed back? What if I stopped playing by her game? I could already feel the tension building, but I wasn't ready to give up just yet. I decided to ignore the HOA for a little while. See how far Karen would go. Little did I know, it wasn't long before things would go from awkward to downright ridiculous. And trust me, I never saw this coming. But before I go on, have you ever felt like you were being watched for the smallest things in your own neighborhood? Do you think Karen's behavior was out of line, or was she just trying to keep the neighborhood nice? I never expected what happened next. It was just another typical Saturday morning. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and I was enjoying my coffee on the porch, trying to ignore the never-ending rules hanging over me like a dark cloud. The whole neighborhood seemed to be at peace, but I had a feeling that wouldn't last long. And then I saw her. Karen. Of course, it was her. Who else would be walking down the street like she owned the whole place? She had that smile again, the same fake over-polish. He'd smile. But this time, it was different. She wasn't just strolling by, she was headed straight for my house. I had barely finished my coffee when she knocked on my door. I could see her standing through the window, her arms crossed and her posture just a little too perfect. It was like she knew I was already on edge. I opened the door slowly, trying to act casual, but the moment I saw her face, I knew something was up. "Good morning," she chirped, almost too cheerfully. "I've got something for you." I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. "What is it?" She handed me a thick envelope, and inside I found an invitation. "You're invited to a neighborhood pool party," she said, practically bouncing on her heels. "It's going to be a blast. Just a little get-together with some of the neighbors and a few of my close friends." I stared at the invitation in disbelief. A pool party? This was the woman who sent me warnings about lawn color violations, and now she was inviting me to a party at the pool? Something didn't sit right with me, but I decided to humor her. "Thanks, Karen, but I'm not sure I'll be able to make it." Her smile didn't fade, but it did tighten a little. "Oh, don't worry. You don't have to RSVP," she said, with just a hint of something more behind her words. "I just wanted to make sure you knew the party's tomorrow, and we're all hoping you'll come." The next day, I wasn't planning to go. I had better things to do than play nice with the HOA queen. But as I sat there on my porch, I couldn't help but wonder, why did she invite me? Something about it felt off, but I still wasn't sure what Karen was really up to. So I decided to walk over to the pool area, just to take a quick look. And that's when I saw it. The pool wasn't just a pool anymore. It was Karen's stage. She had transformed it into this extravagant scene with tables, chairs, and a whole bunch of stuff I didn't even recognize. It wasn't just a casual get-together. It was a full-on event. There were at least 50 people there, all talking and laughing. But Karen was in the center of it all, as if she were the queen of the neighborhood. I froze, hidden behind the tall bushes near the pool. I didn't want to be seen. That's when I heard it. "All right, everyone, I've got the keys to the pool," Karen said. holding up a big ring of keys like a show-off. "Now, let's make sure we follow all the HOA rules, shall we?" She wasn't even trying to hide the smugness in her voice. She was in control, and I couldn't help but feel like she was rubbing it in my face. I knew I had to do something, but what could I do? She had the keys to the pool, but I had something even better. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not after everything she had put me through. I decided right then and there that I wasn't going to let her control me. I was going to fight back, quietly, and without making a scene. I went home, grabbed the lock from my pool gate, and locked it tight. Then I waited. I didn't hear anything for a while, but soon the laughter turned into murmurs of confusion. I watched from my window, the smug smile still on my face. Karen walked up to the gate, her hand reaching for the lock. She tugged on it. Nothing. She tugged again, harder this time. Still nothing. I couldn't hear her, but I could imagine her face turning bright red. She tried a third time, and that's when I knew. She was stuck. She wasn't going to get in. And the best part? She knew it was my fault. I watched as Karen stepped back, looked around at her guests, and then gave the gate one final, desperate yank. She was trapped. I had her now. But here's where things got interesting. Instead of giving up, Karen didn't walk away. Instead, she started banging on the gate. It wasn't just a light tap. She was pounding on it. And that's when I saw the guests starting to look confused. Some of them had no idea what was going on, while others seemed to be whispering among themselves. What was Karen going to do? Would she back down? Or would she push even harder? I could only watch as the drama started to unfold. But I wasn't going to stop her. Not yet. What I did next would set everything in motion. What do you think Karen's next move will be? Will she keep trying to break in, or is she going to finally back off? I thought it was over, that Karen would eventually give up. But instead, she did something I never expected. The banging on the pool gate didn't stop. In fact, it got louder. Each thud echoed through the stillness of the neighborhood, carrying with it the sense that something huge was about to unfold. I had the perfect view from my window, and I was starting to feel a little bit of excitement. Karen was determined. That was clear. She wasn't just going to let a little lock stop her from getting her way. But what struck me was the way she was acting. It was like she was in complete denial. She didn't seem to care about the embarrassment. She didn't even seem to care about the guests who were now awkwardly standing around, probably wondering what the heck was going on. But then, she did something even crazier. She pulled out a set of tools. My heart skipped a beat. What the hell was she doing? I watched as she bent down and started fiddling with the lock, trying to break it open. Her face was a mix of frustration and determination. She wasn't just trying to unlock the gate. She was forcing her way in. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just about a pool anymore. This was about her ego. She couldn't stand the idea of being told no. And here she was, doing everything in her power to prove she could control everyone around her. I stayed silent, not sure what to do. I didn't want to make a scene, but I also didn't want her to think she had won. I decided to do something that would throw her completely off balance. I stepped outside, and I watched. She had no idea I was standing there, just a few feet behind her. I saw her struggle with the lock, her hands shaking from anger. But then, I did something unexpected. I called out to her, "Karen." She froze. For a moment, I wasn't sure if she was going to turn around or just keep going, pretending she didn't hear me. But then, She slowly turned and locked eyes with me. Her expression changed instantly. It wasn't the angry, determined Karen I had been watching. It was a mask of confusion, mixed with a hint of fear. I didn't give her a chance to say anything. "Trying to break into my pool?" I said, letting the words hang in the air. She stood there, speechless for a moment. Her fingers were still wrapped around the lock, and she looked like a deer caught in headlights. She stammered, clearly flustered. "I didn't mean... I just thought... This is a community event, you know." I raised an eyebrow. Community? I didn't realize violating personal property was part of the community spirit. Her face turned bright red, but she quickly recovered, plastering that same fake smile back on. "Look, I'm just trying to make sure everyone is having fun," she said, attempting to sound casual. "This is a special event, and I didn't want you to miss out." I could feel my blood boiling. This was the same woman who had sent me warnings for every little thing, and now she was acting like she was doing me a favor by trying to force her way in? She had crossed a line, but I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of letting her off easy. "No thanks, Karen," I said with a smirk. "I'm good. You might want to let the guests know that your little pool party is officially over." She looked at me, her smile faltering. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you can't just go around breaking the rules when it doesn't suit you. Maybe next time you'll ask before you decide to throw a party in my backyard." For a second, I thought she might actually explode, but instead she just huffed and turned away, her pride clearly wounded. But I wasn't done. "Maybe next time you'll remember that not everything is about you," I added, watching her retreat. She didn't look back as she walked off, but I knew that wasn't the last time she'd try something like this. It felt good to finally stand my ground, but I had a feeling that Karen wouldn't just go away quietly. She'd have her revenge. I was sure of it. The question was, how far would she go this time? Would she play by the rules, or would she come back swinging even harder? Do you think Karen will try something even more extreme to get what she wants? I knew that Karen wasn't the type of person to back down easily, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The days following our little confrontation by the pool were oddly quiet. Karen didn't show up at my door, and I didn't hear any more hammering at the pool gate. It seemed like she had gone to lick her wounds in private, but I had learned not to trust that calm. Soon enough, the storm came. It started with a letter. Not just any letter, but an official-looking one, with the HOA seal at the top in a cold, bureaucratic tone that practically dripped with authority. "Violation notice," it read. I tore it open with one hand, barely able to keep a straight face. Another HOA violation? What could it possibly be this time? It didn't take long to find out. The letter claimed that I had willfully obstructed the HOA-sponsored event by locking the pool gate and preventing the party from happening. Seriously? It went on to say that I had disrupted the community's enjoyment and violated the spirit of the neighborhood. I was shocked. Not only had I not broken any laws, but I had every right to lock my pool gate. It was my property. But that didn't stop Karen from pulling out her big guns. The letter threatened a fine, a big one. A hefty sum that, to be honest, I didn't have the time or patience to fight. But that's exactly what Karen was counting on. I couldn't believe it. She was trying to charge me for not letting her invade my space. At that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to let her get away with this. It was time for me to turn the tables. I walked down to the mailbox, envelope in hand, and as I saw Karen's house across the street, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. I decided I wouldn't just ignore this letter. I wasn't going to play by her rules anymore. So, I got to work. I researched the HOA laws, every single little regulation in the neighborhood, and then I filed a counterclaim. I wasn't going to pay the fine. I wasn't going to let her bully me into submission. But that wasn't enough. I needed something more. I started keeping an eye on Karen. Every move she made, every conversation she had, I was there, quietly observing, ready to make my next move. One day, I saw Karen standing in front of my house with a clipboard. She was talking to the neighbor across the street, Mr. Thompson, an older guy who was always so polite and quiet. I overheard Karen saying something about a compliance inspection for my property. I was done. I walked outside and approached them. "What's going on here?" I asked, trying to sound as calm as possible. Karen turned and looked at me, trying to hide her surprise. "Oh, just a routine inspection, making sure everything's up to code." "Routine?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You've been doing this for a while?" Karen was quick to reply. "Yes, of course. Just making sure the neighborhood stays in tip-top shape." But I could see the lie behind her eyes. She wasn't doing a routine inspection. This was a personal mission. She wanted to get me back for locking that gate. And that's when I decided it was time to make my move. The next day, I went over to the HOA office. I had already gathered all the paperwork, all the emails, every single thing I could find that proved Karen was abusing her position. I knew I had to get this in front of the board. But when I walked in, things weren't as easy as I thought. The board members weren't as receptive as I'd hoped. Some of them were just as controlled by Karen as I had feared. One of them, Mrs. Hawkins, was practically her best friend. She smirked as I explained my case, her eyes full of judgment. "This is all just a misunderstanding," she said. "We all know how Karen can be." But I wasn't backing down. I pushed forward, showing them evidence of Karen's overreach, of her constant interference with my privacy. Finally, after what felt like hours of back and forth, the board members agreed to a vote. I wasn't sure if I would win, but I knew I had one final card to play. The next day, Karen knocked on my door again. She wasn't smiling this time. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice cold and serious. I knew something was up. I opened the door but didn't invite her inside. "What is it?" Her face was tense. "You filed a complaint with the board, haven't you?" I didn't answer. I just let her stand there, stewing in her anger. "Well, I'll tell you this," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're going to regret it." I felt a shiver run down my spine. There was something in her eyes that scared me. She wasn't just angry, she was furious. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. I stared right at her and said, "Maybe it's time someone stood up to you." She sneered and turned to leave, but not before saying, "You'll regret this." I knew it wasn't over. I knew she'd come back for round 2. But this time, I was ready. So what do you think? Will Karen finally stop trying to control the neighborhood? Or will she escalate things even further? I should have known better than to think it was over. After Karen's ominous threat, things took a turn for the worse. I thought she'd go back to hiding behind her usual smile, pretending everything was fine, but I was wrong. Her anger wasn't something you could just ignore. No. Karen was the type who held grudges, and she wasn't about to let me off the hook that easily. The next day, I woke up to a surprise. A knock on the door, and there it was. Another letter. This one wasn't from the HOA, though. It was personal. I tore open the envelope, and my eyes widened when I saw what it said. Failure to comply with community regulations. Violation notice for obstructing HOA-sponsored events and other neighborhood offenses. You will be fined $1,000 for non-compliance. This time, the tone was different. It wasn't the usual HOA legal jargon. This felt personal. I stared at the letter for a long moment, trying to wrap my head around it. $1,000? For locking a gate? For standing my ground against a woman who thought she could control everything? It didn't make sense. I knew something wasn't right. I went straight to the bank that afternoon, looking to withdraw some money, but I couldn't stop thinking about Karen's words. You'll regret this. What if she wasn't just threatening me with fines? What if she was planning something worse? As I walked out of the bank, I got a text. It was from Mr. Thompson, my neighbor, the one who had been so quiet during the whole ordeal. Hey, I think Karen's up to something. She's been telling people in the neighborhood that you're not following the rules. She's spreading rumors. Be careful. I was stunned. Was she trying to turn the entire neighborhood against me? The text continued. She said she's got a big surprise planned for you, and she's not going to stop until you're out of the neighborhood. I couldn't believe it. What was she planning? I didn't have time to think about it too much. I was already back at my house, pacing the living room, wondering what the next step would be. I had been playing by her rules for far too long. It was time to take things up a notch. I grabbed my phone and called a lawyer. I knew I couldn't just let her keep pushing me around. I needed legal help. The lawyer listened to my story, and then, in the calmest voice possible, told me something that made my blood run cold. Karen's been pulling these types of stunts for years. She's got a history of bullying residents, and the HOA hasn't done anything about it. But the threats she's making against you, well, they're bordering on harassment. You've got grounds to fight back. I didn't know what to think. On one hand, it felt like I was finally going to get some justice. On the other hand, I was worried about the cost, the time, and the emotional toll this whole thing was starting to take on me. But there was no going back now. I wasn't about to let her win. I kept my head down for the next few days, staying in my house, waiting for Karen to make her next move. I knew it was coming. It had to. And then it came. Late one evening, there was a loud knock at my door. I opened it slowly, not sure what to expect. But there she was, standing on my doorstep, looking angrier than I had ever seen her before. Karen. But this time, she wasn't alone. She had a few of the HOA members with her. Mrs. Hawkins, of course, and another guy I didn't recognize. "We need to talk," Karen said, her voice ice cold. I stood there for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. I could tell this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. "About what?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant, though I could feel the tension rising. "This," she snapped, holding up a stack of papers. "You're refusing to pay your fine, refusing to follow the rules. And now you've got the nerve to hire a lawyer?" I could see the veins in her neck popping. She was furious, but I wasn't backing down. "Yes, I hired a lawyer. I'm not going to let you push me around anymore." The HOA members behind her exchanged glances, but no one spoke. Karen took a step closer. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. If you think you can take on the whole HOA and win, you're sorely mistaken." Her words were like poison, and I could feel her rage building. But then something unexpected happened. As Karen was talking, I noticed Mrs. Hawkins step forward, her face pale. "You don't want to do this, Karen," she said quietly, her voice almost pleading. "We've seen this happen before. If we keep pushing him, it's going to get ugly." Karen didn't even acknowledge Mrs. Hawkins. Instead, she continued her rant. "I'll make sure you regret this. You'll never be able to get away with it." At that moment, I realized something. Karen was scared. She was so desperate to maintain control that she was willing to go to any lengths to break me. But the more she pushed, the more I knew I had the upper hand. I took a deep breath and looked Karen square in the eye. "Go ahead. Keep pushing. But know this. It's not just me you're messing with anymore. You're messing with the whole neighborhood." Her eyes flashed with something. Fear, maybe? I didn't wait for her to respond. I shut the door with a firm thud, locking it behind me. I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But one thing was clear now. Karen was scared. And that was the first real victory I'd had in this whole mess. Do you think Karen will finally back off now that she knows the neighborhood is turning against her? Or will she keep escalating things? I thought I had her cornered. But Karen had something up her sleeve that I never saw coming. After I shut the door in her face, I felt like I'd finally gained the upper hand. But I should have known better. Karen wasn't the type to let a little setback stop her. The next day, I received yet another letter. This one wasn't like the others. It was personal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No HOA logo, no formal tone, just a handwritten note. "You're pushing me too far, and now I'll make sure you regret it. I've already spoken to the board. You won't be able to hide behind your lawyer forever." I stared at the paper, feeling a cold shiver run down my spine. The tone was completely different from the usual HOA threats. This wasn't just about rules anymore. This was something deeper, something darker. I couldn't help but wonder, what exactly had Karen done? I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just another empty threat. Maybe it was just her trying to rattle me. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. The stakes had just gotten higher. I spent the rest of the day pacing, trying to figure out my next move. I couldn't let her intimidate me. But this time, I was taking a different approach. I decided to go straight to the HOA office. I didn't even call ahead. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for Karen to pull the strings. I needed answers, and I needed them now. When I got there, I was surprised to see the office eerily quiet. The receptionist barely looked up when I walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice as cold as the building. "I need to speak to someone on the board," I said firmly. "It's about Karen and the harassment I've been dealing with." The receptionist didn't answer right away. She just picked up the phone and dialed. A few moments later, Mrs. Hawkins appeared. She didn't look happy to see me, but she didn't seem surprised either. "You again?" she said with a sigh. "What is it this time?" "I want to know why Karen's been going around telling people I'm breaking the rules, and why she's been using the HOA to threaten me," I said, keeping my tone calm but firm. Mrs. Hawkins raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "You don't understand, do you?" she said finally, her voice lowering. "Karen has more control than you think. She's not just the HOA president. She's got connections. And she's been using those connections to get her way for years." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "What do you mean?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. "Let's just say, Karen knows how to play the game, and she's not afraid to bend the rules, or break them, to get what she wants." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "But why would she target me? Why now?" I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. Mrs. Hawkins hesitated before answering. "Because you're the first person who's ever stood up to her, and she doesn't like that. She's used to getting her way, and she won't stop until she takes you down." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had no idea how deep this went. I thought I was just dealing with an overbearing neighbor who had too much time on her hands. But it was clear now. Karen wasn't just a control freak. She was a master manipulator, and she'd been using her power to run the entire neighborhood. I wasn't just up against a petty HOA president anymore. I was up against a system. I left the office, my head spinning. I knew things had just gotten a lot more complicated. Karen wasn't going to play by any more rules, and now it was clear. Neither could I. I had to be smarter. I had to be bolder. And that's when I had the idea. I would gather evidence. I would expose Karen for who she really was. But it wouldn't be easy. She had the entire HOA board on her side, and they were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect her. But I wasn't about to back down now. I knew the game had changed, and this time I was going to make sure Karen couldn't escape the consequences of her own actions. But as I left the office, a new thought crossed my mind. Was I in over my head? Was I making a huge mistake by pushing back against someone who had so much power? I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Would I be able to expose Karen and win, or had I just signed up for a war I couldn't win? What do you think? Should I have taken a different approach, or am I right to stand my ground? I had no idea just how deep Karen's reach went. After my conversation with Mrs. Hawkins, I felt like I was walking into the unknown. I had no backup, no allies, just my wits and my stubbornness. But it was clear. Karen wasn't just going to lie down and let me expose her. It had been days since our last confrontation. No more letters. No more unexpected knocks at the door. But that didn't mean the storm had passed. If anything, I could feel it building. And it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. The day I had feared arrived faster than I expected. I was sitting at home, flipping through some legal documents, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Thompson, my quiet neighbor who had warned me about Karen's manipulative nature. Karen's been going door to door telling everyone that you're trying to destroy the HOA, that you're the problem in the neighborhood. I could feel my heart race. She's telling people that you're a threat, and now she's got the support of most of the block. I stared at the message, my blood boiling. Karen wasn't just trying to intimidate me anymore. She was turning the entire neighborhood against me. I had to act fast. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer. "This has gone too far," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Karen's spreading lies about me. She's manipulating the whole neighborhood. I need help." My lawyer's voice was calm, but I could tell he was concerned. "You need to document everything, every conversation, every threat, and we'll bring this to court." I was done playing by Karen's rules. It was time to expose her for who she really was. Someone who used her position to intimidate, manipulate, and control. But I couldn't just go to court and hope for the best. No, I had to dig deeper. I had to find the evidence. So, I spent the next few days doing everything I could to collect proof. I took photos of every letter she'd sent me. I recorded every interaction, every subtle threat. I even started talking to my neighbors, asking questions, digging into Karen's past. And that's when I stumbled upon something that would change everything. It wasn't just about the HOA. Karen had been involved in other shady dealings in the neighborhood, deals where she used her influence to push people out and take over properties for her own gain. She'd been behind the mysterious disappearances of several longtime residents. No one dared to speak up, but I could see the pattern now. She wasn't just controlling the HOA, she was using it as a cover for her personal vendettas and schemes. I had everything I needed to take her down, but I knew I couldn't do it alone. I went to a few of the other residents who had been close to the edge of Karen's control. People like Mr. Thompson, who had seen it all. Together, we started gathering witnesses. We had everything we needed to bring Karen's empire crashing down. And then, the final confrontation happened. I didn't expect her to come to my door. After everything that had happened, I thought she would hide behind the HOA board and her minions. But that night, she knocked on my door. I opened it slowly, and there she was, standing in front of me. Her eyes were colder than ever. "I told you this would happen," Karen said, her voice barely a whisper. "You've made a mistake. You don't know who you're dealing with." I didn't say anything at first. I was trying to stay calm. I knew this was it, the moment I had been waiting for. "I think it's you who's made the mistake, Karen," I said finally, looking her in the eye. "You've been using the HOA for your own personal agenda. You've been pushing everyone around, lying, manipulating people, and I'm done letting you get away with it." Her smile faltered for a moment. She wasn't used to being challenged. "You think you've won?" she said, her voice cracking slightly. "You think you have the upper hand? You're nothing but a nuisance, a problem. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy everything you've built." But her words were hollow now. "You've already lost, Karen," I said, "and you'll see that when this goes to court." Her face twisted in anger, and for a moment I thought she was going to lash out. But then something changed. She took a deep breath and straightened up, her posture shifting. She was no longer the woman who had bullied everyone into submission. She was vulnerable. "I'll make sure you regret this," she said one last time. But this time, her voice was shaking. With that, she turned and walked away. I stood in the doorway, watching her go. For the first time, I felt like I had control over the situation. Karen wasn't untouchable anymore. The next day, I filed my lawsuit. I presented the evidence to the HOA board. And soon, the whole neighborhood knew the truth about Karen. The aftermath was messy, but it was worth it. Slowly but surely, Karen lost her grip on the HOA. People began speaking out, and her influence started to crumble. But even now, as I sit here thinking about it, I can't help but wonder, was Karen truly done? Or is there more to her plan that I haven't seen yet? Do you think this is really the end of Karen's reign? Or is she just biding her time for her next move?